Innovation is usually motivated by the desire to make meaning, that is, to change the world. True innovation usually occurs on the next curve, not on the curve you're already on.
Oh, don't worry, Hyundai's not going to get off that easy. But just take a look at it, front to back. I'm going to tell you one story that will define my experience with this vehicle. I was at a gas station last night with Turbowski filling it up, and this older gentleman came right up to it with great interest, and he said, "Look at what the Italians have been able to do with Chrysler." And you know what? He's not the only one that's made the mistake, because even if you look at the Genesis badge on this car, it does look like a Chrysler logo. And to me, it looks like what the designers did here is took clay molds of Lexus, Mercedes, BMW, Nissan for that matter, and just threw the clay together, and this is what came out. It looks almost like every other car. It lacks that brand recognition that cars like the Veloster have or the old Sonata, where you could just look at them and know that they were Hyundais. When I first got into the Genesis, my first impression was, that's not bad. But the more I sat in it, the more I realized there is a lot of attention to detail here, which is my favorite thing about a car interior. From the soft touch materials on the sides, there's actually padded knee rest area. The armrests are properly padded. The door armrest is properly padded with good quality leather. The dashboard materials, it's debatable on the hard textures here, but there's a good use of materials here, from soft touch, perforated leather, regular leather, and then you get to actual real aluminum trim on the dash with this wood finish as well. Now, I don't quite understand the whole purpose of wood trim in a car, but this is done so well that I can look past it because of the dark hues and the way that it breaks up the interior design completely. All the seating materials, all the surfaces that you interact with just feel really high quality. The rubberized controls, the button and the tactile feedback in all the buttons is just excellent here for a Hyundai. Actually, Hyundai's best effort ever. You're thinking, okay, nice interior, but what about the seat? Because Hyundai isn't particularly known for comfortable seating. And that changes with this car too. Because you have a million-way adjustable seat here. And even if you're a giraffe, you could probably get comfortable. You have this thigh cushion that moves forward and back. You have dual lumbar adjustability. So lower lumbar, mid lumbar, up, down, whatever. You could move your bedroom into here and just sleep in this car. That's how comfortable it is. The other nice thing about this car is the center stack. It is laid out as about as good as you can possibly lay something out. There's tactile feedback in the control knobs for the HVAC temperature controls. All of it's soft touch rubber. The fan controls are easy. The volume knobs are easy to turn. The interior tones, they're extremely, extremely subdued, very calming. The other thing that I like a lot is the rear window shade. When you put that shade up, go into reverse, it automatically comes down for you in reverse so you can see out the back window. Now the difference is, compared to, let's say, the LaCrosse that we got into, it goes up on its own when you go back into drive, so you don't have to re-hit the button again. My favorite thing is, let's say it's hot as hell in the car and the AC's blowing. You get a phone call, a Bluetooth phone call. It automatically lowers the blower speed of the car so it doesn't interfere with your phone call. Take that cover off.
Doesn't feel like carbon fiber. It weighs about 50 pounds.
Well, it's because of the foam insulation. Look at that. I could use this as a pillow. It's so thick in here. This is not something I'd want to work on.
Hell no.
I mean, this is a beast. And the packaging is so good in here. I keep saying that about this car because you look at it and you can tell that They just didn't throw this shit together. I mean, it's really well thought out. Everything has a place for it, but man,
They don't have room for anything else.
right? There's no extra space in here. These doors are super solid. It's actually kind of hard to close. You actually have to slam them because they're so thick. But that's, you know, another piece of the solidity of this car that you wouldn't expect. But the big negative aspect of this car isn't really the solidity, it's actually the weight. With the V8, the 5-liter, this car is pushing 4,700 pounds. That's without the driver. So to put that in perspective, the Chevy Colorado that we test drove a couple weeks ago, that was about the same weight as this car, and that's kind of crazy when you think about it. When I drive this car, typically I just leave it in eco mode, which you can see on the drive selector. It kind of goes from eco to sport to drive. Eco mode, just the transmission is the least aggressive, it gets into 8th gear the quickest, and it has the lowest revs. Because you're dealing with a 420 horsepower V8 here, it does suck up the gas if you have a heavy foot. I find that I don't need to be on the gas because there's just so much power and torque at the low end. You just don't need to be revving it out. Now, in the case that you want to, when you do go into sport mode, the revs immediately come up. You can see it's going into a lower gear. It wants you to be ready to drive more performance oriented. And then when you turn off the traction control and then you hold it for 3, 4, 5 seconds, it turns off the traction and stability control, which then just puts you in the mood to drive like an animal. So we're gonna see exactly what the power's like. We're gonna go into manual mode. And the manual mode is, again, this is a luxury car. The transmission is not very responsive, but we'll kind of give you a demo. Auto upshifts for you, which is annoying. The brakes are incredible, but you need to get heat in them. They are an aggressive compound, 6-piston calipers. If you're in cold weather, they do not work. Well, let me rephrase that. They work, but they don't work well. Your initial bite is not there. So what you have to do is you got to get on these brakes a lot, get some heat in them, and they grab immediately. They are really, really strong. So we're going to give you a little acceleration test here. Start off at first. There we go. And let's just put it in a normal mode here and go out of manual. The paddle shifts, it's just kind of pointless. I'll be completely frank. The transmission's not fast enough. It's not the type of transmission where you can do what you want with the paddles to gear select at will. Just leave it in automatic and you'll be totally fine. This car is all about cruising. This motor is all about being smooth. It is just buttery smooth. You'd think 420 horsepower, you'd think, wow, this thing's got to be fast. And it is fast, but it's not in the sense where you'd think it'd just throw you back in your seat. It just always has power. It's always power when you need it. And it's the type of power that builds and builds and builds, and you just look at the speedometer and you're like, wow, I'm going way too fast. But this is more about having the power and the smoothness of a V8. So coming full circle now, I said right at the get-go, this is a milestone for Hyundai. The big reason is they've been able to tie all these things together in a really good way. And for the first time in a Hyundai, they have a legitimate chassis and suspension, which makes a huge difference in a luxury car. Well, really any car for that matter. But they did it, and they've done everything really well. Now the big issue here is this vehicle lacks the appearance. It lacks a brand identity when you just look at it. People confuse it for other cars. That's a big problem. The other issue is I can look past the quirks, but it does have a massive problem with depreciation, and that could be just a brand issue going forward for them. But overall, this is an excellent car, one I enjoyed almost the whole time I drove it.